Hello one and all, Ryan here. I've been deep in the research phase for this video, and by research, let's just say a lot of Xenos got bladed. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition's been out for a little over 2 weeks now as of this writing, and I've just wrapped up my second playthrough. The first run, about 40 hours, was a mad dash to the end so I could see the new story content before the internet inevitably spoiled it. The second playthrough was more thorough. I aimed to see as much of the game's content as possible. All told, I've spent around 115 hours with this version of the game, so yeah, I've got thoughts. I have also been keeping an eye on how people are reacting as they hit the ending and encounter the new story beats. There's definitely a conversation to be had there. Before we get into it, fair warning, this series will include spoilers, and not just for Xenoblade X, but also for Xenogears, Xenosaga, and the number of Xenoblade Chronicles games, including their DLC campaigns. We're going to be talking about spoilers everywhere, but the purposes of this video will only extend to Chapter 3's events of the main game. Before diving into the narrative weeds, I want to talk about the game itself. The original Xenoblade X content, what's changed in the Definitive Edition, how it holds up, especially from someone who's spent an absurd amount of time with the Wii U version over the last 10 years. My relationship with Xenoblade X has always been complicated. It was always my least favorite Xenoblade game, but also the one that I thought had the most potential. I often compare it to Fire Emblem Fates, a game with so many cool ideas and so many baffling flaws. Both games clearly had a ton of passion poured into them, especially in the early stages. In Xenoblade X's case, Tetsuya Takahashi reportedly wrote a full novel's worth of story, lore, world building, all of it, most of which had to get trimmed down significantly for the final game. Part of that was due to a late in development shift from a static protagonist to a custom avatar to better support the Wii U's online features. But let's talk about that in more detail now, shall we? July 2054. Humanity is on the brink of extinction as two warring alien factions battle in Earth's orbit. One side, dubbed the Ghosts, hold the upper hand, though they're still taking losses. The Ghosts use weaponry powered by dark matter engines, and when those engines explode, they create localized black holes. Opposing them is the Ganglion, part of a broader galactic mafia called the Samar Federation, named after a progenitor race of aliens known as the Samarians. Now, that part of lore is something we're casually fed over the course of the game, and we will talk more about the Samarians later, but for now what matters is they're believed to be extinct. Though it turns out humanity and several other alien races are Samar's direct descendants. This revelation deeply upsets the Ganglion, who've deliberately chosen Earth as the site of their war against the Ghosts. Despite everything, humanity is somewhat prepared. Several massive arc ships manage to flee Earth, though we only see one firsthand, the White Whale. Now, a quick aside, the name of the White Whale has a couple of fun allegorical nods. First, it calls back to Xenosaga 2, where there's a cafe on 2nd Miltia named Moby Dick's. Pretty clear reference there. And second, there's an astronomical tie-in. The constellation Cetus? This is sometimes called the Whale in English. And also, it contains a star named Mira. You can find this detail easily on Wikipedia, same as I did, same as the fandom wiki did. I'm not too deep into astronomy beyond the surface level fun facts, so I'm not going to go too far into it and try to talk out of my ass. But it's a neat connection, because Mira is also the name of the planet that humanity crash lands on, 2 years after the events I just described. In universe, the name was chosen by Maurice Chausson, the acting Director General of the newly formed autonomous human government. He named the planet Mira after the ideals of a woman we never meet or hear about in the main game, only in the prequel stories that were originally released with the Wii U version. I am going to be making a separate video where I read these separate stories. I used to have one back on my old channel before it got nuked, but, you know, remaking and as the such. Anyway, these have been fan-translated by some seriously cool people in the community. Anyway, the woman I mentioned earlier was named Mira Torres, one of the original architects behind humanity's evacuation plan, known as Project Exodus. Now, according to the Xenoseries wiki, which is the better wiki overall, Mira was considered the emotional backbone of Project Exodus. It was her compassion and ideals that inspired naming the new planet after her, as she was not able to set foot on its grounds. After the White Whale crash landed, humanity scattered across the unfamiliar world in search of the Lifehold Core, the central unit of the White Whale containing the rest of humanity in stasis during the journey. The only major structure that came down intact was the Habitat Unit, dubbed New Los Angeles, or NLA. Still under construction at the time, the city survived the landing thanks to the reserve power from the White Whale's systems. It's here, in the 2 months following the crash, that we meet several of the game's core characters, many of whom are introduced in the prequel stories I mentioned earlier. First, there's Secretary Kentaro Nagi, former captain of the White Whale, now serving as the Secretary of Defense in the new human government. He shares leadership duties with Maurice Chausson, the acting Director General who I mentioned before, and Commander Jack Vandam, who was previously an engineer aboard the White Whale, and now heads up the organization known as Blade. Blade is the military faction formed as part of Project Exodus. And yes, it is an acronym, and thus the Xenoblade we're talking about here. And this acronym is one I actually have some pretty strong opinions about. I'm typically not a person that gets all up in arms about localization changes. Largely, in most cases, 99% of the time, I think localization does a really, really, really good job. And I understand the difficulty with which comes localization, so this is not a dig at localizers at all. I'm just saying, in this specific instance, I prefer the original translated term for this acronym. So in the original Japanese, BLADE stands for Beyond the Logos, Artificial Destiny Emancipator. And in English, it was localized as Builders of the Legacy After the Destruction of Earth. Now, personally, here specifically, I prefer the original version. I know there's a whole debate, which has gone on for 10 years now, over all of the localization changes that this game has had. I like all of them outside of this one. I'm fine with Skells being in place of dolls. I'm fine with the Lifehold in place of life. I'm fine with Ganglion in place of growth. I prefer those, honestly. I'm used to them. Blade's acronym fucks with me every single time. And I specifically know this because I named one of my book series after the first 3 words of this Japanese original form, Beyond the Logos. Yeah, my series Beyond the Logos was named because I like this acronym so much. Anyway, let's break it down real quick, because both sound like word salad, and I can see why people would like the localization, because it is easier to understand on the surface. That is kind of the exact reason why I don't like it as much. So, Logos is a term that longtime Xenoblade fans will recognize. It was the original designation for Malos as an Aegis core in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Obviously, this game's use of that predated the use of Logos in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but now we have even more thematic connection with this. The word itself is Latin, meaning the word or the will of God. It's often interpreted as divine action, destiny, fate, a god's intent, all of these ideas. Then we have Artificial Destiny Emancipator, which is a dressed up way of saying fighting for your own future or breaking free from a preordained fate. So putting this all together, Beyond the Logos, going beyond divine will, Artificial Destiny Emancipator, choosing your own path. In other words, we defy fate. We carve our own future. This is so raw. Now, we compare this to the English version, Builders of the Legacy After the Destruction of Earth. That's twice as long, stuffed with twice as many filler words just to make the acronym fit, and it completely strips out the religious undertone. And that feels off. Now, I'm someone who is, traditionally an atheist, I would say, agnostic maybe. So it's not just because religion good, but I think Xeno handles religion in such an interesting way in every single other game. In so many ways, there's so many religious undertones in the sense of it as an analytical or historical lens with which to see the story through. In Xenosaga, you literally have Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene as characters, with Mary being a major character throughout every single game. Obviously, the revelation is not until Xenosaga 3, but Cosmos is Mary Magdalene. Like, she is the spirit of Mary Magdalene. Christianity is at the root of Xenosaga's story, And Gnosticism, the school of thought surrounding many different kinds of schools of thought, if you're getting deep into the weeds of that, is the entire backbone of Xeno as a whole. Like Xeno, Gears, Saga, and Blade, all of that is Gnosticism. You have divine roles with the Architect in Xenoblade 2. You have Elysium, the Greek allegory. Obviously, myth and religion are paired together in Xeno. It's not just religion. But to sanitize the meaning of a hugely governmental organization, which in Xeno is hugely into myths, because this is the same government that in the mainline Xeno universe names in this universe they name the ship the White Whale. In the mainline Xeno universe, we know the coalition government has named a ship after Icarus of Greek myth. It's so out of character that these government folks who for so long would choose to not have the religious allegory. So it conveys the same idea. It says what you want it to say on the surface. It's just, it includes nothing under the surface that Xeno names typically have. Especially given the new context that we get with the new epilogue stuff. I'm gonna come back to this when we get to that point in the video series. But anyway, back to the story. At this point, we're introduced to a few more key characters, starting with Elma. She is a Blade Colonel and the leader of the Reclaimers, a Blade subdivision tasked with recovering lost White Whale wreckage and locating survivors. Wow, that sentence was really hard to say. Lost White Whale wreckage. Anyway. She's voiced by Caitlin Glass, who also voiced Matilda from Fire Emblem Echoes, Kyoko Kirigiri from the Danganronpa animation and in Danganronpa 3, the anime series, not the video game V3, and Alcina in Unicorn Overlord. Elma was previously partnered with a mysterious figure known only as the Legendary Hero, a pilot who fought off both the Ganglion and Ghost forces back on Earth in a massive mech called the Ares Prime. It's a tandem scale, meaning they piloted together. But just before the White Whale crash landed, both the hero and the Ares vanished, leaving Elma alone to deal with the aftermath. Under Elma's command are three more important characters: Irina Akulov, Gwyn Evans, and Doug Barrett. Irina and Gwyn are part of the Interceptors, a Blade branch focused on defending New LA from Mira's native wildlife. Irina's voice actor, Kari Karanen, also voices Mokuba Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh!, Mahiru from Danganronpa 2, as well as Sarah Valstein from Trails of Cold Steel. Gwyn Evans is voiced by Micah Sinter-Nicholas, notably known for voicing Takumi from Fire Emblem Fates, among others. Doug, on the other hand, is a Harrier, a combat-focused subdivision designed to take out threats to humanity's survival through calculated offensive operations. He's voiced by Patrick Seitz, who also voices Basilio and Laurent from Fire Emblem Awakening, Nekomaru Nidai from Danganronpa 2, Magnus from Kid Icarus Uprising, Yaritza from Fire Emblem Three Houses and Three Hopes, and Mama from The Somnium Files. And then there's Lin Lee Koo. She's young but incredibly sharp, a tactical mind brought aboard the White Whale thanks to her parents, who were engineers on the project. Tragically, though, both died in an engine accident before the alien invasion. Lin's inclusion wasn't just about legacy, it was merit. She did earn her place. She's voiced by Cassandra Lee Morris, who also voices Looking Cool Joker, Sothis from Fire Emblem Three Houses and Three Hopes, Yubel from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Alfian Reyes Arnor and Fee from Trails of Cold Steel, and Operator 6-0 from Nier Automata. In many ways, Lin is one of the main characters of Xenoblade X. I'd say she and Elma both share the spotlight, but Lin is the narrator for both the game's prologue and epilogue, so we experience much of the story through her lens, even though most of it is through our eyes. Visually, she shares a lot in common with Momo Mizrahi from Xenosaga, and I'd argue she's one half XP of Momo and one half partial XP of Shion Uzuki, also from Xenosaga. What's interesting about Xenoblade X, though, is how it handles its XP characters, which, for those uninitiated, are characters who are legally distinct remakes or reimaginings or spiritual successors of previous characters. And Takahashi has been doing this since Xenosaga to Xenogears. If you don't believe me, look up the character Faye from Xenogears, and then look up the character Abel from Xenosaga, and tell me that there's not any legally distinct characters going on here. There are a lot of discussions about many different archetypes of character XPs. I've gone over some of them in my Xenosaga explain videos. There's a lot, and it's very purposeful. I think Lyn here is a Momo and Xion XP, and characters aren't limited to having just one XP, because Estelle from Xenoblade 2 during Cosmos' side quest is 100% a Xion XP. So characters can have multiple XPs if they are fulfilling a similar role, reusing a similar design. I would say here Lyn is very similar visually to Momo, but purpose-wise is more like a Xion. She's like an inventor. She's like a very smart individual who is dealing with a lot of trauma. Similarly, take Kentaro Nagi, for example. He is clearly filling out that Dunban / Saiten from Xenogears / Jin from Xenosaga / Jin from Xenoblade 2, the stoic veteran with the katana wielding. And yes, Kentaro Nagi does in fact wield one. It's really cool. Now, with all that said, we'll be talking about more of these characters as we go along, because Xenoblade X is all about the world building. I'm not going to break down every single side quest in the game, because there is just too much. This would get dry really fast. But instead, I'll highlight the ones that I think are especially interesting or well done, and leave the rest as a reward if you want to go play this game yourself, because you totally should. But before we get into all that, we gotta talk about Ryan Xenoblade. Your avatar, your custom character, your self-insert into this world. For me, literally because for some reason the marketing of this game decided to name Cross Ryan, and so I get to now have Ryan Xenoblade as a meme for the rest of my life. Thank you, Monoliths, I pray. I joke, but honestly, I think the avatar is the weakest part of the game. I mean, I like the concept. The idea, like, this is the Xenoblade game to do it. It's just, it doesn't work as well as they wanted it to. Now, I like the concept, and the voice cast options are stacked. It's just the execution where it falls flat, and many of my complaints with the story tend to revolve around decisions made with the avatar, because this game was originally being designed, written for, developed for a static character who was the hero, who was Elma's partner. We'll be talking about him much later because we now have a character for him. And I really like that character a lot. And I think it is very clear that this story would have benefited if he was the main character from the start. But around, I mean, this number is an estimate. They've given out numbers in the past, but no one truly knows unless they're in the development room. They say around 80% of the way through the game's development, they changed course and removed this character in place of an avatar to better suit the multiplayer functions of the Wii U and the online system. And because of that, a lot of concessions had to be made with how the story was being presented. I don't think it works as well as they wanted it to. I feel like they knew it didn't work as well as they wanted it to. And that's why we got more focus on the new character in the epilogue story. Your character in this story is only vocal with voice acting when calling out battle arts. That's it. And while I get why they went this route, it is way less expensive to only record battle lines, and that's it for each actor, which there's a lot of notable names here. I get it. I'm fine with that. I'm not a stranger to silent protagonists in role-playing sense. There is one cutscene in particular that really suffers for having the silent protagonist, and I'll talk about it when we get to it, but if we had voice acting for this one cutscene, and the voice is solely just a scream or a few screams, I would have way less complaints about the voice acting aspect, because the voice cast of everyone else is really good. And so to have a cutscene where a scream is required and your character is not doing it and everyone else is vocalizing their emotions, it really sucks. It really sucks and makes Cross such a waste of a really good idea. Now, Cross as a personality in the choices you can make, I think is a really funny way, because there are so many unhinged responses in the text responses you give out to characters. That's funny. I like that aspect. And if we see Cross again as like a character, I want them to handle it as they handled Byleth in Fire Emblem Three Hopes, because obviously Three Houses was the game where you played as Byleth, and they are the protagonist, and for specific story reasons, they are a bit of a non-character. And while I do see why they did it the way they did, I think it could have been done better. Three Hopes did the silent hero from an outside perspective done right. I really like Byleth's character in Three Hopes. So if we get a follow-up story, I want to see Cross in a similar style of, they are a character now. They have a general unhinged level about them. Just kind of meld the... And I know that's like the main reasons why people are concerned, is that they're going to invalidate some people's playthroughs. I will take that hit. If it's not exactly the Cross that I played, if we can get some concrete level or some more onto Cross themselves, because right now they are actively, even in the definitive edition, they are the weakest part of the story, bar none. With that being said, the character creator itself is solid. You can do a lot of cool things with this character creator, and there are a lot of new reference hairstyles from Xenoblade 2 and some from Xenoblade 3. Really cool. I like this. I like being able to like role play as different characters, and the Malice hairstyle is very funny. For the voices, I always tend to go with the Yuri Lowenthal voice or the Adam Howden classic voice for Shulk, because I tend to play the male Cross. The way they deliver those art lines, they are straight up brainworms for me. But every time I hear the Keith Silverstein voice, all I can think of is Shido from Persona 5. It's cursed for me. Even when he shows up in other games like Eric from Zero Time Dilemma or Mondo from Danganronpa, it's always,
"Damn brat, I'll sue!"
Anyway, fun fact though, Yuri Lowenthal also voiced Kevin Winnicott in Xenosaga, and he's not the only returning voice. On the female voice side, you've also got the actors for Doctus and Abel from Xenosaga as well, bringing Abel back into the conversation. And of course, Shulk and Fiora's original voice actors are back under the classic voice option. Now, starting the game proper, we meet our character, who I'll be referring to as Cross from here on out, just because that's the fanon name that they've been given, and because I'm not going to want to confuse myself by saying Ryan so many times, because I've never said my name so many times in a row. I'm just going to go with Cross. Cross wakes up from stasis inside of a white whale life pod, and we're immediately greeted by Elma, who has woken us up. This is where we get our first proper exposition dump about the state of the Earth, the white whale, and where we're headed next, New Los Angeles. Now, unsurprisingly, we've got amnesia. Classic setup, makes having backgrounds for role-playing a lot simpler. We remember nothing of our past life, but we can shoot a gun, which is apparently good enough for Elma to not leave us behind. It's during this intro that we also learn the region we wake up in is called Primordia, name that fittingly gives off that wild, untouched frontier vibe. And shout out here, Primordia is home to one of the best shots in the entire series. You know the one. You've seen it in all the trailers. You've seen it in all the Luxon videos. It's so iconic, they even reference it in Future Connected.
The rain's starting to let up, just in time for sunrise. Follow me. I promise you're gonna love this. wild, huh? They're all indigenous, as far as we can tell. We need to learn to play nice with these guys if we're going to try and coexist together. We call this planet Mira. You won't find it on any star chart. But it's our new home.
And number 2, the soundtrack to this game bumps. I am a Sawano truther. I have been here since day 1 saying that this soundtrack was peak, and you all lied about it. You all said it was the worst, most embarrassing thing ever. I argue to you, the sound balancing sucked. And I will take that to my grave because it did. It was a very Sonic Adventure 2 at many points. However, I was here in the trenches when people's first reactions to this game's music came out. It was chaos. It was glorious. So for the less initiated, let's give you a crash course. Primordia's theme? Slaps. NLA's Day theme.
One, two, three, four.
Slaps. NLA's Night theme. Also slaps. We'll keep this list going as we hit more bangers because trust me, there are a lot. This game's soundtrack is so good. I pre-ordered and imported this game's physical soundtrack back when it was available on a 4-disc CD. It is that good. And people glaze the main series soundtracks as they should. We need to put some respect on Xenoblade Chronicles X soundtrack. It's about time. I've been saving the big one, because the song we get during this battle tutorial is Black Tar. This is the game's main battle theme, and technically this is Black Tar Part 1 because Part 2 doesn't kick in until we unlock skills later on, so cool dynamic battle music. There's an old video that is now private, unfortunately, so I can't post it here, but it was David Whittaker, the lead vocalist of this song and the songwriter of this song, where he talks about writing this specific song, and he says he threw it together in about a week, and he really just kind of he was rushed. He didn't really care about it that much. He just put it together, which is hilarious. It's just very funny because Sawano, Hiroyuki Sawano, the main composer, does not have that same style, kind of like, let me slap things together. Like, he worked really hard on it, and the fact that David Whittaker just kind of was like, sure, fine. It's just funny in comparison, and normally that may be a testament to quality, but it's not here because Black Tar slaps.
Now we're stuck on a whole different planet. No peace looking at the sky. Trouble's always all around, so we stay quick with the guns and cannons. Standing as long as we can until we get all dolls up. Then call our bets off with low guitar. Dealing with lives messed up. Dark matter, every minute matters. In the wild, other lives shatter. See it go scatter. As they pour out, we can handle them. It's the car taking over the cave, unexpected. Hard to accept it, getting marked with death. Seeking friends, snatched and darkly possessed. The tar inside, still in the body and breath. So only a shell is left. Weakness the head of the flesh, a fight to the death. Screaming, where's the relief? Maybe no more sleep. All swallowed in grief. Images start to stalk like a beast. I hear voices, but no one talking to me.
It's like I'm washing away my peaceful days anyway. Anyhow, on the sea left of the sea. If you were losing your way, you need some protection. Right, I'll get you wherever you go. They could find you with sticky. Wherever you try to feel it, you just can't be there.
Now, one big difference going into this game versus the original. We finally have larger fonts, so the in-game UI is actually readable this time around. The subtitles are readable this time around. On top of that, we now get audio settings, which not only let you swap between different language voice casts, including options for cross, but also including volume sliders to balance vocals, background music, and system sounds. This is such a huge improvement because, like I said, the original audio balancing in this game was hot garbage at some points. Cutscene music would drown out voice acting so many times. It was huge Sonic Adventure 2 energy. Now, that being said, there is one thing that I've been hoping for to come into Xenoblade games for audio settings that still hasn't made its way in, and I've been wanting it for years. Separate volume sliders for battle vocals and cutscene dialogue. Right now, all voice audio is tied to a single slider, and honestly, there are a lot of times when I want to hear the battle music more clearly without having to also make everyone whisper during cutscenes. I like the voice acting. I like the battle quotes, they're fun. But sometimes the battle dialogue does get a lot, and that is a common complaint, and those of us that are ingrained to it are ingrained to it. But if I'm trying to play this game in a big TV with my fiance in the room, I have to be more mindful than I normally would have about entering a battle because, oh wait, this is going to be very annoying to anybody who's listening to the same quotes coming in and in, which could very easily just be adjusted if I'm playing by myself, crank it to the max. If I'm playing it in a public setting, I don't want to enter a battle for the rest of my life. Which is only made worse because of the new gameplay system, the quick recast. Which makes it so when I am in a battle, a lot of the time, it is blasting.
Tornado blade!
Hostile neutralized.
Tornado blade!
Range combat.
Don't worry, I'm all over this.
Side
Tornado blade! Tornado blade! Tornado blade!
Yeah, so you may now more understand why I want a separate battle versus cutscene dialogue audio toggle. Anyway, and now that we've covered the basics, let's really dive into Xenoblade Chronicles X's battle system. If you're a fan of the mainline series, you'll recognize that each game has its own spin on combat. X's system is the closest to Xenoblade 1's, but it adds a bunch of new mechanics and depth that keeps things fresh and exciting. Some may say confusing and overwhelming. I have said both of these things at one point in my life. The first major shift you'll notice is the dual weapon system. Instead of the usual one weapon slot for auto attacks, you've got two. This means you can mix and match different types of attacks, and your arts are directly tied to your weapons. And both of your different weapon types are on different auto attack cooldowns. So swapping between them to make the most out of your auto attacks is really good. Different characters like Elma and Lyn come with unique sets of weapons and skills that define their combat roles. Elma is a Full Metal Jaguar class, a speedy glass cannon with a big focus on positional damage. She's very similar to Shulk from Xenoblade 1. She can deal massive damage, but her HP does get a little bit lower, and she does more damage the lower her HP is. So positioning is key to keeping her alive. Meanwhile, Lyn takes on the role of a tank, gathering aggro to keep enemies focused on her, while your more fragile characters can work from a safe distance. There is no pure healer in this game, sorry Charlotte fans, the two of you that exist, but healing is still very much a part of the game through the soul voice mechanic. This is where the system gets kind of interesting. Soul voice triggers when your party members call out to you to use specific actions, such as debuffs, buffs, or melee arts. When these are performed, you'll get these button prompts that are a lot like the ones from Xenoblade 2's salvaging minigame. Performing these actions successfully boosts your morale, which acts similarly to how it did in Xenoblade 1. It recovers health and increases your overall effectiveness in battle. So while there's no dedicated healer, Soul Voice does mean you'll be buffing and supporting your team in ways that feel pretty natural that every teammate can do. Now let's talk about TP, or tension points, which are an integral part of battle strategy. Certain classes, like the Duelist class, have the ability to generate TP really fast, which is used to unlock powerful abilities and revive fallen teammates. TP builds up through auto attacks and some specific arts during certain conditions, and once you've hit 1000 TP, you can unlaunch powerful auras or melee attacks, with 3000 TP being required to res your allies. The cool part about the art system is you can rank up your arts like you could in Xenoblade 1. The more you use them, and then you get stronger with them. The more fights you do, the more BP you get. The longer you wait for cooldowns to fill up as well, the more damage you'll do, or the longer your arrows buff will last. This is done by a cooldown wheel that will continue to move as soon as your cooldown has reset. This helps keep the flow of the battle moving and allowing you to do more strategic things in a non-turn-based battle. Speaking of arts, they are color-coded for a reason. Orange arts are for melee, yellow arts are for ranged attacks, blue are for auras, green are for buffs, and purple are for debuffs. The color system is going to be more vital when we discuss the overdrive mechanic, but that's going to be a lot down the line. So let's talk about classes. When you max out a class by earning enough class experience, you can rank up, similar to Fire Emblem's promotion system. This unlocks higher tier skills and the ability to equip new weapons. A big advantage here is you can mix and match arts from different weapons to create your own hybrid classes after you've maxed out a class, which adds another layer of customization and strategy. Skills are another part of class progression. As you rank up a class, you will unlock different passive abilities that can be equipped to your character. Some classes, like the starting class, the Drifter, have a ton of skill slots, 5 being the most you can have, allows for a lot of customization. Other classes, like the Duelist I mentioned, and I only mentioned because it was the one that I primarily use, may have fewer slots, but gives you bigger stat buffs, and gives you still powerful abilities. When you unlock a skill, you can apply it across any class, giving you flexibility in how you build your character. All in all, the battle system in Xenoblade Chronicles X offers a nice blend of familiar mechanics from Xenoblade 1 with enough new stuff to keep you interested and learn about. All this to say, I thought the original release's battle system was probably my least favorite out of all of the Xenoblade games, with probably close to Xenoblade 1. While I do like having more to do than Xenoblade 1, it is a lot. It is overwhelming, and it does not have great tutorials in the original release of how to learn it. Now though, I think it is a lot better. One of the reasons of this is the new quick recast system, which you can unlock after the reins are let off of you after Chapter 3. Essentially, the quick recast lets you bypass the cooldowns of your arts by using a portion of a special meter that fills up as you engage in combat. The more you use an art, the more your cooldown time accumulates, but with quick recast, you can use that built-up meter to get your arts back into action without having to wait for them to cool down naturally. It's a small addition, but it changes how you fight any fight. And what is really cool is you can extend your quick recast meter here by exploring more of the world. The more of the world you explore, the more quests you complete, the more energy clips you will obtain, which give you more reasons to do this. Also, when you press it on an art that's ready to go, already loaded up, you'll trigger a secondary cooldown without having to wait for that cooldown, which means you're able to use the art immediately, but at a fraction of the cost. It's the perfect balance between speed and cost, and honestly, the best way for longer fights to do is to focus on using your secondary cooldown so you can make most use of it. This honestly makes the battle system so much more enjoyable and a lot more fast and active, because one of my biggest complaints about X's battle system, which is also my biggest complaint about 1's battle system, is early on, it feels like you don't have a lot to do. You're waiting for cooldowns constantly, you're waiting for if you have the right thing to beat the right enemy, and it's not as interactive as I want it to be until you get to a certain point in the story, which in X is usually about the midpoint, and in 1 it's usually when you get about to Dunban. So here you get to make use of the battle system a lot earlier in the game, so you can experience it a lot longer. Alright, well, beginning is about set for now. I guess we can return to the story. Chapter 1 opens up with Cross being introduced to the new world of Mira. The first major task at hand is getting acclimated to the inhabitants of New Los Angeles and the Blade Organization, which is humanity's military faction tasked with defending the city and exploring this world. We meet Kentaro Nagi, the new Secretary of Defense, and Mauricio Son, who is a key political figure in this whole shebang. Blade isn't just a military force, they're the lifeblood of humanity's survival here on Mira, handling everything from exploration to combat to dealing with the planet's indigenous wildlife, just far more dangerous than anything they've ever expected. Now, even though this specific information is learned a little bit later, these first 3 chapters are all kind of one homogeneous tutorial of learning about NLA and Blade, so I'm going to make the effort to take some time to talk about a big difference in this version versus the original, as we learn about different subdivisions within Blade that we talked about a little bit earlier. So first up are the Reclaimers. They are responsible for the retrieval of valuable resources and the recovery of white whale wreckage. Their primary job is to scour the planet for any remaining bits of humanity's past and bring back anything that can be useful for rebuilding civilization. This can include salvaging valuable technology, gathering supplies, or even rescuing survivors who might be left behind after the crash. The Reclaimers also focus on searching for the Lifehold Core, which contains humanity's collective knowledge and resources that will be key to long-term survival on Mira. As mentioned previously, Elma is the colonel of the Reclaimers, and she has a personal stake in the success of this subdivision. Second are the Interceptors. These are the frontline defense of New Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. Their primary mission is to defend humanity from the indigenous creatures of Mira, many of which are highly dangerous and territorial. They act as the first responders to any threat to the wildlife, ensuring that New LA remains safe from these creatures while humanity sets up a stable foothold on the planet. The Interceptors are also tasked with securing and clearing zones that are too hazardous for civilians to navigate. Irina Akulov and Gwen Evans are notable members of the Interceptor team. 3. The Harriers. The Harriers are Blade's offensive squad tasked with hunting down and eliminating high-priority threats that could pose a risk to humanity's survival. Unlike the Interceptors, who focus on immediate defense, the Harriers engage in strategic offensive operations to eliminate key threats. They often tackle larger, more dangerous creatures, or enemy forces that might disrupt human operations on Mira. Their role is vital in maintaining peace and ensuring humanity can continue its exploration without being wiped out by the planet's many predators. Doug is our prime example Harrier from before. 4 are Pathfinders. They are responsible for the exploration and mapping out the uncharted regions of Mira. They venture into the unknown territories of the planet, scouting new areas that could be valuable for human settlement or resource gathering. Pathfinders are crucial for uncovering new locations where humanity can expand to, and they all play a role in mapping the topography of Mira for future development. Their secondary task is to track and analyze the alien environment to better understand the planet's ecosystem and hazards. 5 are Curators. They are primarily responsible for the preservation of human culture and knowledge in the aftermath of Earth's destruction. They focus on collecting and safeguarding humanity's cultural, historical, and scientific records to ensure that the important knowledge and artifacts are not lost to time. This includes not only salvaging physical items, but also ensuring that humanity's legacy and the stories of Earth's people are remembered. They are tasked with overseeing the conservation of pre-crash technology and important documents that could aid in rebuilding civilization. As they struggle to establish a new home, their role is critical in maintaining of human identity. 6 is Mediators. They play a crucial role in maintaining the social harmony and diplomatic relations among the different factions within the human settlement of Mira. This includes not only facilitating internal communication between Blade's various subdivisions, but also managing relations with the indigenous species, and potentially forming alliances or peaceful agreements. The Mediators work with leadership figures and commanders to ensure cooperation and manage conflict resolution, preventing disputes from escalating into larger issues. 7 are the Outfitters, and they are charged of providing the gear and equipment necessary for survival and operations of Mira. They ensure that the people of New Los Angeles, as well as the Blade agents, have access to appropriate clothing, weapons, combat gear, and etc. for all the stuff needed to weather the harsh conditions of the planet. And finally are the Prospectors. They are responsible for locating and gathering valuable resources across Mira. They are tasked with exploring the planet for rare minerals, materials, ores, and other valuable resources that can be used for crafting, building, and improving technology. These resources are essential for both survival and long-term development, and Prospectors ensure that humanity has a sustainable source of raw materials. Now, this is a lot, and it seems like it's leaning towards a highly customizable type of game ahead. And yes and no. In this version of the game, this is all flavor text and is mainly for role-playing purposes. Which choice you choose here does not have any gameplay effect whatsoever. This may seem like a doom and gloom kind of situation, but in reality it is for, I think, ultimately a reason I'm okay with. So in the original version of the game, you had 3 tiers of experience: character experience, class experience, and blade experience. Okay, character EXP is probably the most straightforward of the 3. In Definitive Edition, character EXP still levels up your avatar, but unlike the main Xenoblade games where level directly correlates with your combat power and stats, character EXP mainly serves as a way to equip better gear. You still get minor boosts to things like health and base stats as you level up, but this game places a heavier emphasis on equipment as primary factor in determining your strength, so while leveling up is necessary, it isn't as crucial as other systems. In the original version, you had a level cap of 60, but with the Definitive Edition, the cap was raised to 99, which might seem like a big change. However, there isn't any new gear or mechanics at these higher level caps, meaning you don't get a huge spike in power, but the OCD satisfaction of getting your character up to level 99 is there, but it doesn't give you an unfair advantage. Class EXP is what helps you unlock and level up your classes, which ultimately lets you access more arts and skills to customize your playstyle. Each class has its own sets of arts and abilities, and as you level up that class, you get access to higher tiers. This is where the meat of the character's combat playstyle comes from. As you rank up in a class, you also unlock more skill slots that allow you to equip passive abilities. And last but not least is Blade EXP. This was used to raise your blade level, and this was used to level up one of 3 research skills you could use to then obtain treasures out in the world. The Blade EXP system is one of the more unique systems that adds flavor to the experience. As you progress through the game and complete missions and quests, you'll gain Blade EXP. The higher your blade level, the more advanced your research skills became. These research skills allowed you to find gathered treasures scattered across the world of Mira. They're essentially used for world exploration. It was a common sight back in the original version to find a treasure out in the wild and, oop, its level's too high, so you have to make a note of it to come back when you had a research level high enough to examine it. Or in all likelihood, forget about it, run into it again, excited you're going to get the new treasure, and damn it, same one as before. Okay. Thing is, there's another aspect to exploring Mira that basically makes your choice for you, which you should prioritize first. Frontier Nav. The Frontier Nav system in Xenoblade Chronicles X is one of the game's most pivotal systems for exploration and resource management. It allows players to unlock and collect information about the world of Mira, guiding them through the massive open world environment, while also providing rewards and progression for completing various tasks. At its core, it is a large-scale mapping and resource tracking system that helps you navigate the various continents you explore. Through Frontier Nav, you can discover hidden locations, track your progress in terms of exploration, and gather important materials that will aid in your survival. Now, you use Frontier Nav by going out into the world to find specific locations placed by other pathfinders, and place probes to utilize the data gained from those specific FN sites. Now, there are certain FN sites that are limited to certain points in the story, such as some that are in locations unreachable to you by foot, but there are some that are also locked behind a level 4 mechanical research level. This would mean that you would be able to physically access the FN site, but be locked out of its benefits until you raise your level up via your Blade EXP. In Definitive Edition, Blade levels have been effectively removed. Instead, you're automatically granted the equivalent of Research Level 4 for all 3 field skills, which means you can access about 90% of all of the treasures across Mira and reach 100% of the physically accessible FN sites right from the start. Later in the game, a series of side quests titled Off the Record, originally used to unlock a level 5 for each field skill, have been slightly reworked. While they still gate the highest tier of research behind them, some of their objectives and content has been adjusted. Completing these quests will unlock access to the remaining treasures that were originally locked behind the level 5 cap. Just like the original, no FN sites are locked behind level 5 requirements. Overall, I think this is a solid change. It keeps exploration feeling rewarding. If you manage to find a treasure or FN site, you're now far more likely to actually reap the benefits without hitting an arbitrary wall. That said, one casualty of the system overhaul is Blade EXP, as this was originally tied to your division activities. In the original, for example, Harriers would earn bonus Blade EXP from fighting tyrants, while Reclaimers got theirs from recovering White Whale wreckage or other key items. With the removal of Blade levels, that progression path is gone. You still gain character EXP and class EXP from these actions, but with Blade EXP removed, the bonuses tied to your division choice are now flavor text. It is a bit of a loss, but honestly I think it's worthwhile trade. Exploration feels far less restricted now, and you're no longer funneled into raising mechanical as fast as possible just to avoid locking yourself out of FN sites, as those are obviously the best kinds of treasures to get. The new system leans into player freedom, and that's a net win in my book. That said, there's still more to unpack with Frontier Nav. As mentioned earlier, you place probes at designated points across each continent. These aren't just for show, they come with real gameplay benefits. Because the Pathfinders have already assessed these sites, each segment on the FN map is rated based on its potential yield of 2 resources, and some extra stuff that I think doesn't matter as much, such as combat rating and fuel recovery, but the big 2 ones are credits and Miranium. Credits are your standard currency. Miranium, on the other hand, is a valuable mining resource used primarily for 2 things: donating to arms manufacturers to expand their gear and weapon selection, and later on refueling skells. Since skells aren't in the picture yet, let's just focus on the first. You start with a basic probe, which gives you a default rate of revenue in Miranium. As you progress, you'll unlock mining probes and research probes, each ranked from 1 to 10. Mining probes boost your Miranium yield at the expense of revenue, while research probes do the opposite: more credits, less Miranium. There are more probe types at play too, like the storage probe, which increases your overall Miranium storage cap, or the duplicator probe, which copies the effects of probes that are next to each other. All probes generate the resources, Miranium or credits, on a pretty regular cycle, roughly every 10 to 15 minutes depending on how active you are. Just standing around won't cut it. You have to be moving and playing the video game. Although if you're a fan of the classic rubber band trick, you might be able to cheese it a bit. Of course, that really only works for credits, since the Miranium still caps out. Credits are especially valuable in this version of the game because rearranging your probe layout costs money. More if the probes you're using are higher level, so while it's tempting to slap the best probes everywhere, you'll be spending a good chunk of change doing so. You can also link identical probes in chains for big bonuses. A minimum of 3 matching probes gets you a 3-chain bonus, 5 get you a 5-chain, and max is 8 for a major payout. Beyond that, extra links continue to boost the effect of the 8-chain bonus. Sometimes it's smarter to link up a bunch of lower value probes into a big chain, rather than dropping high-value ones in small groups. It all comes down to how many FN sites you've unlocked, so there's a clear incentive to keep exploring Mira to open up more slots to expand your Frontier Nav network. Muranium, as mentioned, is used to level up arms manufacturers. Each company can go up to level 5, unlocking progressively better weapons and armor. More Muranium equals better gear, and better gear lets you push further in the world to fight bigger threats and uncover more terrain. It's a satisfying feedback loop. If it's not obvious by now, I'm really into the system, and I haven't even touched the side quests yet. The way exploration, resource management, and progression is all interconnected is heads and shoulders above what most open world games try to do. It's a lot to take in, sure, but the game does pace this out over the first 3 chapters. I'm just dumping it on you now so we can get back to the plot without stopping every few minutes for it. Now, returning to said plot. So, Chapter 2 starts off after Cross settlement and Midway in Illinois. The first order of business, get Cross officially registered as a Blade, because if we're going to survive on Mira, you might as well be on the front lines helping out. Though there is a really funny scene that happens if you say no to Nagi's request to join Blade.
Honey, we're home.
Yes, very amusing.
Who wants a fresh cup of tea?
Thank you, Ms. Gu, but I can't stay long. I just wanted to pass along a request from your commanding officer.
Commander Vandam? Does it have anything to do with our new arrival?
Correct. He stopped by while you were out on your tour. He said he'll come back, but that I shouldn't wait to ask you.
Here we go. I bet I can guess.
You probably can. He wants to fast-track our new friend here for Blade duty with a training assignment. What in the hell are we waiting for? As he put it.
The commander does have a way with words.
Makes even my pitch sound smooth.
I explained about the memory issues, but he didn't see it as a problem. And to be honest, given our current need for Blade recruits, I can't say I entirely disagree.
Hey, it's not me you need to convince. Blade service is voluntary, remember?
Of course, and I would never force or coerce anyone. Well, friend, what do you say? Can we count on you to do your part? Ms. Ku, how much do you know about life pods?
Life pods? You mean like from the white whale?
Yes, those life pods. Like the one Elma, a Blade, rescued our friend here from. Emphasis on the word rescued. Because if you aren't released, you just sit there frozen in stasis. Forever.
So did you have an engineering question about life pods? Or is this all part of the guilt trip?
I'm sure I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, what'll it be, friend? Now, you wouldn't want to refuse the people who saved your life, would you, friend? I knew you'd make the right choice.
There's tension all over the city's survival, and the search for the Lifehold core, an essential part of the White Whale, contains the majority of human life in stasis. If we don't find it, it's game over for humanity. With Cross now as a certified Blade, Chapter 2 becomes a bit of a vibe check to see how the game will be structured. It's your first real taste of the open world loop, prepping your party, taking the missions, heading back out into Primordia to start unlocking event sites and mapping out the Frontier Nav. Which leads us to... Chapter 3 builds on our foundation and raises the stakes a bit. Word comes in about a violent alien activity near one of the White Whale's crash sites, so Elma, Lynn, and Cross are sent to investigate. This is where we properly meet the Ganglion, specifically the Prone. Now, the Ganglion are a hostile alien race with a burning hatred for humanity, and they're not really subtle about it. Their full agenda remains unclear, but it's obvious they're actively hunting down the White Whale wreckage and any surviving humans. Now, as I mentioned, the species that we encounter here in Primordia are called the Prone. They are a war-hungry alien race from the planet Tormian. They've joined the Ganglion Alliance and have made it crystal clear that it is fight on sight. Fun detail. In Xenoblade Chronicles 2, when Elma appears as a blade, she initially mistakes Rex and his crew for a group of Prone, which kicks off the friendly conflict between them. Now, back in X, things escalate. We learn that the Ganglion are capturing humans for unknown purposes, some of who don't return. This puts even more pressure on the search for the Lifehold. If the Ganglion find it before we do, we're fucked. We defeat the Prone, and in the aftermath stumble upon a Nopon disguised as a potato. Now, this game, since it was dubbed by NOA instead of NOE, we get a different pronunciation for Nopon versus Napon. We just have to deal with that, I guess. I'm going to say Nopon for the purposes of this game, but Napon for any other Xeno game. Now, enter Tatsu, an accidental stowaway and, depending on who you ask, either comic relief or one of the game's deepest war crimes. Now, I wouldn't call Tatsu my favorite Nopon companion, not by a long shot, but his age does put a lot of his behavior into perspective. He is the youngest confirmed Nopon party member in the series, confirmed at 13. Others like Kino and Tora from Definitive Edition and 2 respectively might be younger, but with Tatsu we have direct confirmation that he's 13. And honestly, he acts how a 13-year-old would, overconfident, whimsical, full of ego, especially when playing off of Lynn, who basically becomes his older sister and will not let the joke of eating him die. Starting with this chapter and continuing for the rest of the game, Lynn makes it her mission to remind everyone that Tatsu looks like a potato. Cue the running gag of her threatening to cook and eat him. If you've heard the joke once, you've heard it 100 times. And no, they do not land. But from a character perspective, it almost kind of works because it's so immature. It feels like something Lynn will look back on in Xenoblade X2 and cringe over. A teenager would run a joke into the ground. I've seen people seriously argue that this ruins the writing of the game, and okay, I get it. Having it crop up in every chapter is a lot, but it's not that deep. Just skip the cutscene if it bugs you that much. Some folks act like Tatsu personally kicked their dog. He's not great, but he's also not terrible. That said, he does come with a major plus. The follow ball. This mechanic is way better in Definitive Edition, especially around mountains and rough terrain. Returning to NLA after this mission marks a major turning point. We officially add Elma, Lynn, Irina, Gwen, and Doug to our party, and with them comes access to a few new systems. First is the quick recast mechanic I mentioned earlier in the gameplay section, and second is the introduction of affinity missions. Affinity missions are large-scale side quests that focus on specific party members. To take them on, you'll need to hit certain affinity thresholds with the relevant character and meet a minimum level requirement. I actually like how these missions are structured. They give some solid character development and help build party dynamics in a meaningful way. That said, there's one major issue that is carried over from the original release. You cannot abandon an affinity mission or main story chapter once you've accepted it. Normal quests can be dropped or swapped freely, but these two categories are locked in once started. That means you cannot begin a new affinity mission or progress the main story until you complete the one you're currently on. And if you get in over your head, you're stuck. A perfect example is Lynn's first affinity mission, the repair job. It seems straightforward, but requires a resource called the White Comatite that is tied to your Frontier Nav setup. If you've been diligent about unlocking FN sites, it's not too bad. But if you're underprepared, you can easily hit a wall. Back during the original release, some reviewers were reportedly stuck here for 10 hours. It can be frustrating. Thankfully, there are only 2 affinity missions I'd say are really bad about this kind of difficulty spike. The repair job is the first. The second doesn't unlock until after chapter 9, and trust me, when we get there, I am going to tear it a new one. Now with that out of the way, there are some genuinely great changes that become clear once you finish up chapter 3. First off, party management. In Definitive Edition, there's a super handy active members menu in the pause screen that lets you swap unlocked party members in and out on the fly. It is a massive improvement, letting you tailor your party to your playstyle and get to know the cast, which, by the way, is the largest out of any Xenoblade game. In the original release, this was way more restrictive. For most of the main story chapters, you were locked into having Elma and Lyn in your party, leaving you with only one free slot, and sometimes not even that. Now, those restrictions have been relaxed a lot. You have way more flexibility in who you bring along. On my first playthrough, I stuck with Elma and Lyn because it felt familiar, but on my second file, I constantly rotated party members out as I got them to max out all of their affinities without any real grinding. It blew my mind because their entire character arcs I'd never seen before, thanks to another great change. Characters now gain character EXP even when they're not out in the active party. This also means no one gets left behind because you're not using them 24/7. It also encourages you to play how you want. Characters outside the party get EXP, but they don't get class EXP or battle points, which are what strengthen their arts or skills. It's a good balance. They feel like actual party members now, not just benchwarmers. They're out doing their own things. And to top it off, thank God, you no longer have to run around NLA looking for the one party member you want to add for this one mission. In the original, that was the only way to switch characters, and it got old fast. With this new menu system, swapping characters is quick and painless. All of this also makes Affinity missions way more accessible, and in most cases, they're genuinely great little expansions that flesh out the characters in cool ways. We'll be diving more into those, though, next time, along with taking a closer look at the characters we've unlocked and digging into the next batch of story chapters. I've got a good feeling about this series. I'm really excited to start talking about when the story starts heating up, and all of the Affinity missions as we unlock them. But until then, if you got the game, maybe boot it up and see what stands out to you. I'd love to hear what characters or systems have grabbed you. Catch you next time.